Good morning. Happy Friday to you. This is my second video of the day. The first one was just a little short one, but this video is a totally different topic. It involves the Virginia House of Delegates, which is in session right now. Yesterday, there was a committee hearing. The They call it the Public Safety Firearms Subcommittee. It's 8 Democrats and 3 Republicans, and they were looking at several very bad bills to see if they would advance to a general floor vote. I'm going to go through these really quickly. I'm going to tell you the delegates first. The Democrats were Delegate Simon, Delegate Clark, Delegate Lopez, Delegate Helmer, Delegate McClure, Delegate Fegans, Delegate Gardner, and Delegate Pope Adams. The Republicans were Delegate Tony Wilt, Delegate Oates, Delegate Zaire. Um, I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can without boring you to death. The first one was HB 19, House Bill 19. It basically required somebody to give up their firearms rights for 3 years for a dating relationship misdemeanor offense. Normally, civil rights only go away for felonies, not misdemeanors. HB 21 from Delegate Helmer. It basically opens up firearms manufacturers and sellers for illegal use of a legal product. In other words, if you buy a firearm from Joe's sporting goods store and you go out and use it in a crime, the victim of the crime could sue the person who sold the firearm and the manufacturer, which is totally asinine. Um, my son is a beer salesman. So if one of his customers is a store and they buy several cases of beer and a guy walks in off the street and buys beer and gets into a DUI, is my son culpable for that? Of course not. This is a solution looking for a problem. HB 40 outlaws unfinished frames and receivers unless serialized. That basically means no homemade guns of any type. I know they're going to say, "Oh, we don't like ghost guns," but you're talking about a chunk of metal that isn't even a firearm that could be used for a firearm. It has to be serialized. Um, I have an old World War One revolver, and it's not serialized because they didn't have serial numbers back then. But this is they worry about ghost guns, or they say they do, but criminals just file off a serial number anyway. HB 93 forces firearm surrender under protective orders in a way that could disarm innocent family members. Basically, if I were under a domestic violence restraining order, I had a protection order against me, or I was a prohibited person, my wife wouldn't be able to own firearms. So you're taking away her civil rights because of something I may have done, which is totally asinine. Um, there's HB House Bill 110 imposes a civil penalty for towing if a handgun is left in an unattended vehicle. Well, the the language in the bill says visibly. Now, you shouldn't leave a visible handgun in your vehicle. But this same delegate, Amy Laufer, who is pushing this bill, is also responsible for creating a lot of gun-free zones, which it forces them to leave their gun in their car. So it's like create one problem and create another law to deal with the problem that you create. Oh, man. Democrat logic. But anyway, now you have a towing company that tows a vehicle and they've got a firearm in their possession. Well, what could go wrong with that? You're blaming the victim, the person who left the gun in the car. It may be a dumb thing to do, but they're still the victim if somebody else breaks in the car to steal it. Um, that's like saying you accidentally left your car unlocked and somebody stole stuff out of it. Yes, you shouldn't leave your car unlocked, but you're the victim. You're not the problem. The thief is the one who is the criminal. All these laws are just aimed at everybody besides the criminal. Um, Another one is HB 217 by Dan Helmer. Bans commonly owned firearms and standard capacity magazines made after January or July 1st, 2026. Well, that was problematic enough because firearms don't have a date stamped on them of when they were manufactured. Magazines are not serialized and they don't have a date of manufacture. But they took the grandfather clause out of it. So that instantly is retroactive, so that if this bill passes, anybody who has any of those things, boom, you're a felon or a class one misdemeanor. And there's no amnesty period either. So it's like they sign, if the governor signs it into law, bam, a million Virginians are instantly going to be guilty of a felony, I suppose. Stupid, stupid, stupid. He also doesn't, this guy went to West Point. He's a military veteran. He doesn't really even know what an assault weapon is. They're basing it on cosmetic features, like a threaded barrel, a pistol grip, a flash suppressor, collapsible stock, and things like that. That's not what makes something a military assault rifle. It doesn't have selective fire. It's a civilian rifle. And for you people who say that an M16 and an AR-15 are the same, or that the AR-15 is a civilian version of the M16, you're not really correct about that. The AR platform was developed as a semi-automatic civilian rifle in the 1950s, and the military in the late 60s then they upgraded it to selective fire to be a military weapon. So it was a civilian weapon first, and an AR-15 is still a civilian weapon. It's not an assault rifle. So just put that crap to bed. Also, high capacity magazine they defined as anything with more than 10 rounds. Well, most magazines, standard capacity, hold more than 10 rounds. It's going to depend on the type of weapon and the caliber. A 45 ACP, like an M1911, standard magazines hold 7 or 8 rounds. That's standard capacity. High capacity for that would be one of those really long ones, like a 15 round. But for a Glock 19, which is a 9mm, it's smaller and it's double stacked. Standard capacity is 15 rounds. For a Glock 21, that's a 45 caliber, standard capacity is, I believe it's 13 rounds. Now, there are some Glocks that hold 17 or 18 rounds, but that's standard capacity. It fits within the magazine well, maybe sticks out half an inch at the bottom. An AR-15 standard magazine is 30 rounds. Okay. He wants to ban that. That's the standard capacity. If you put a 10-round mag in an AR, it only sticks out about an inch beyond the magazine well. It's hard to grab the damn thing when you want to change it out. Senseless, totally senseless. And there are millions of 30-round magazines in circulation. On a sidebar, New Jersey banned high capacity magazines, oh God, probably 10 years ago. And they gave people a time to turn them in. Not as, according to the state police superintendent in New Jersey, nobody turned them in. So if you got no compliance in New Jersey, what the hell do these people think is going to happen in Virginia? People are going to say, homie, don't play that. And I don't see people participating in a big protest. People are just going to it's going to be silent civil disobedience. Nobody's going to, it'll be like, don't ask, don't tell. But yeah, if they take out the date, the grandfather date, supposedly, I think there's going to be a big problem with the Supreme Court with the Bruin decision. The courts are probably going to shoot that down, pun intended. Another one is HB 229, Delegate Hernandez, prohibits firearms and many knives in medical facilities or mental health treatment centers. Okay, you're just creating another gun-free zone. Stupid. Now, if you have a place like that and you've got a magnetometer, you've got metal detectors, you've got armed security guards, that's different. Okay, but you're just creating another victim disarmament zone where a bad guy will have more carte blanche to do what he wants. It's just no common sense. Another one is HB 626, Delegate Carlson, restricts firearms on college campus without lawful cause. Basically, you're creating another gun-free zone. Are these people stupid? Do they not remember Virginia Tech? There was a gunman who was able to unalive 32 innocent people, not because of the type of gun he had. He had 2 small caliber pistols and 10-round magazines with him. It was because he was the only one with a gun. That's what all these things happen in these gun-free zones. So what do the Democrats want to do? Let's make more gun-free zones. Let's make the whole city a gun-free zone. Yeah, that worked for Chicago, didn't it? What a putz. HB 702 establishes a firearm turn in and destroy program funded by taxpayers. They call it the buyback. The government cannot buy back something it never owned. Plus, if you fall for this scheme, they're basically buying your gun back from you with your own money. What kind of crap is that? This is just, the taxes in this state are high enough. The government is already too big and they want to find a way to waste more money. Um, Another one is HB 871, Delegate Downey. Mandate specific storage requirements and biometric safes in homes with minors. That basically means that nope, can't have combination safe, can't have key lock safe. It's got to be a biometric safe. Well, what happens if you're sweating or you're bleeding or, you know, let's say I don't know, let's say the biometric safe is scheduled for your fingerprints and something happens to you and your wife needs to get to the pistol. Now she can't get to it. So, and homes with minors. Well, what does that mean? My son has a toddler. My grandson's a toddler. So he's not at the age where he's going to get up and get a gun. So my son's would be in violation of this law by having a gun where he and his wife can reach it, but it's still not reachable by the toddler. So, a minor, that's anybody up to 18. So if you have a 17-year-old kid who's a senior in high school who's responsible with firearms and you're at work and something happens, the kid can't get access to the firearm to defend herself or himself. This is just you're painting with too broad of a brush here. There are people who are probably 17 who shouldn't be trusted with a firearm. And there are probably in the rural areas out here, you've got kids who are 12 or 13 who understand and who take firearm safety very seriously because they've been taught. This is just something you're trying to bring everybody down to the lowest common denominator. It's idiocracy in action. Virginia is becoming the society depicted in idiocracy, and it sure as hell is not taken 500 years. Another one is HB 969, Delegate Price, creates a state gun violence prevention agency focused solely on firearms. So these people don't care if somebody gets pushed out of a window or run over by a bus or poisoned or bludgeoned to death. They only care if they get shot. So you're more dead if you get shot than if you get thrown off a building. Yeah, that makes a lot of freaking sense, but it's just another way to waste taxpayers. You'll get the governor who will appoint that board. She'll get her cronies and put them on there, and you'll get a nice six-figure salary and a little corner office, and you get to say, I'm doing something about gun violence, when reality, they're not. Also, many of these people pushing these draconian gun laws also oppose stricter punishment for violent criminals who use guns. So we're going to give the criminals a free pass, and we're going to go after law-abiding, peaceable citizens who mind their own business, who aren't going around shooting up people. This stuff is freaking insane. And the last one is HB 1359. This is one of the most insidious ones, Delegate Hope. It creates a costly permit to purchase scheme with fingerprints, training requirements, and a de facto handgun registry. What that essentially would mean if this bill passes is you would have to pay a tax to exercise a constitutional right. Now, it's already bad enough. We do have shall issue permit laws in Virginia. You can get a permit and it's anywhere between $25 and $50 for 5 years. Now, you can argue that's a tax. Okay, $50 for 5 years, $10 a year, that seems sort of reasonable. But this permit to purchase thing, there's been talk that they would charge you up to $500 for it. That's a hell of a lot of money. Basically, the Democrats who care about the working man and the poor people are going to put a $500 freaking tax on somebody where they have to pay to exercise a constitutional right. What happens if they said, okay, we're going to charge you to exercise your First Amendment of freedom of worship? So when you go to church, you have to pay a tax to the government. I'm not talking about money in the offering plate. I'm talking about tax to the government. What if you wanted to I don't know, publish a magazine? Well, we're going to charge you a fee to do that. Come on. You don't, that turns a right into a privilege. But who gets to be the arbiter of what the training requirements are? Is it the same as a law enforcement officer would have? How often do you have to renew it? Who gets to set these standards? They're probably going to make it so that the office that does this is only open the third Tuesday of every other month or something like that. Fingerprinting, you don't need that anymore. We used to have to do that to get a concealed carry permit. I had to get fingerprinted, and when I renewed it, I had to get fingerprinted again, even though my fingerprints didn't change. Now that's government efficiency for you. Now you don't have to get a permit. The technology is good enough. But But also, so you're going to train, you're going to buy a revolver, right? You're going to have to train for a revolver. Well, what happens if you want to buy a semi-automatic? Okay. So you have to go through the training for that. And when you do this, you're registering, which is a prohibited, really, you're registering that particular firearm. So that just creates a paper trail of who has what firearms. And all this stuff about, they want to have a gun registry for public safety. No, that's bovine scat, is what that is. They want a registry of all legal gun owners because here we go, children, repeat after me. Registration leads to confiscation, which in some cases leads to extermination. Yeah, I'm being a little extreme here, but that has happened before. I wonder how many people were shoved onto boxcars in Germany and they said, well, that can't happen here. Or they were, you know, murdered by Stalin or Mao or Castro or any other communist dictator. Um, Kim Il Sung, Kim Jong Il, Kim Jong Un, Pol Pot. The name goes on and on. Ho Chi Minh. But this is just this is insanity, and this is Virginia. Okay, you're talking about the home of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, James Madison, James Monroe, George Mason, and it's like, and Patrick Henry. These people are rolling in their grave right now. They look like a lathe because they're spinning in their graves so fast. But here we are in Virginia. People say, well, Spamberger's a moderate. She's hard left. She campaigned as a moderate, but her voting record was like Nancy Pelosi. And she did say during the election that she would sign all these anti-gun bills. Now, as of this morning, I didn't see anything about how many of them passed out of committee, but with an 8-3 Democrat majority in that committee, and every one of those Democrats are anti-gun, I would highly suspect that these will go on to a general vote. And there are corresponding bills in the state Senate. They have to reconcile it. But some of the worst ones are the so-called assault weapons ban and the permit to purchase thing. That's what you do in places, communist states like Massachusetts and New Jersey. You don't do that in Virginia. They want to make our gun laws will actually be worse than California because if some of these people get their way, any pistol, semi-automatic pistol or rifle that accepts any magazine greater than 10 rounds, and which almost all of them do, would be considered an assault weapon. So that Glock 19 that you have, that'll be illegal. But something else to consider, the laws don't apply to the government. So the police, they still get their standard capacity 15 round magazines. They're still going to have all their guns. The people guarding all these politicians, they're guarded by police who have all these weapons. These leftist Democrats are not anti-gun. They're just anti you having a gun, which should tell you something. If a politician relies on a disarmed populace, then they really might not be that good at governing. And why would politicians want the people to be disarmed? Because maybe they plan down the road to do things to them that could get them shot. Just saying. The state constitution in Virginia, I believe it's Article 1, Section 13, does mention about armed self-defense, the right to keep and bear arms. Second Amendment obviously does. So here these people get up there and they all put their hand up and they swear to uphold and defend the Constitution. And the first thing they want to do is use it to light fires with. They probably want to shred it and light it in their fireplace, and then they want to use the state flag to wipe their butts with it. The motto in Virginia is Sic Semper Tyrannis, which loosely translated from Latin means thus to tyrants, or in the case of Virginia, death unto tyrants. If you look at the state flag, you'll see that, and that's what that means. That's where that comes from. These people are elected to office and they make a mockery of the values on which the country was founded and which are necessary to keep the republic from collapsing. And it's very disturbing, all the histrionics aside, this stuff does get me worked up a little bit, but they're just so easy to they want to trade away essential liberty in order to gain a promise of temporary security. And in the end, you will end up with neither. So, um, but if you really want to look at the way these people vote on other things too, they want to raise taxes. They want to, some of them even want to make it so that if your child says they are trans and they have a mental illness and your son thinks he can be your daughter thinks she can be your son or whatever, that if you object to that, the state, some of these people want the state to be able to take away custody of your own freaking children. I mean, come on, and they want, you know, boys playing in girls sports, and, they want, um, I think it's okay to have boys changing in the locker room with girls. And, it's some of that stuff is kind of wacky, and they want to ban gasoline powered leaf blowers, and they want to ban internal combustion engine automobiles by 2035. I mean, that's like less than 10 years from now. What they want to they're worried about things being more affordable, but they want they want to tax dog walkers. They want to tax things that are services that aren't taxed now, and they want to raise the income tax. It's like, why does our state need an income tax, personal property tax, which you have to pay on your car every year? I have a 2004 F-150. It's 22 years old, and the tax is still over $300 for last year. They want to raise energy taxes. And then when people say they can't afford it, well, we're just going to subsidize them. That's like coming up behind somebody and breaking your leg and then handing you a crutch and saying, see, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't be able to walk. These people are insane. I mean, God, I don't see any way to stop it either, because our General Assembly is like 64 to 36 Democrat, and our state Senate is 21 to 19 Democrat, and we have a left-wing Democrat governor. The only thing that's going to stop this might be the judiciary. I hate relying on the courts to be a backstop to protect liberty. And then when you make these laws, enforcement is another matter. I live in a rural county. It's more than 500 square miles, and we have 4 or 5 deputies on duty at any one time. Okay. They got a long way to travel if something happens. So you're going to take away people's protection when the nearest law enforcement officer might be 30 minutes away. Come on, you know, get a grip, people. But yeah, these politicians, I'll tell you what, some of these people have scales where their skin should be. I mean, you talk about slimy. My God, it's crazy. But I know other states are going through some crap too. But Virginia, one of the states that existed when the nation was founded, our first president came from Virginia. A couple of our presidents came from Virginia. Ah, man, would they be ashamed? Thomas Jefferson would be like smacking his head, and James Madison, James Monroe, George Mason, they'd all be beating their head against a cement wall just because it feels so good when they stop. But yeah, we've got some crazy stuff going on down here in the Old Dominion. So y'all have a good Friday and enjoy your weekend. It's a cold one out there. Peace out.